a game where we could and probably should have been 4 down after an hour, but came back to win 3-1 with Amad scoring a hat-trick in the last, 10-12 minutes. What was you left thinking? For the first hour, it was pretty much the performance I, and seemingly the manager, was expecting or feared. On the back of 2 really good performances, 2 very good and probably unexpected results, I said in my video earlier this week that the Southampton game had become a big game. More for what it represented rather than the opposition. We've seen far too often this season that we struggle to rise to the challenge of a lower team or middle of the league team more than we do against City, Arsenal, this sort of team. Nobody seems to know why. I think most people suspect that it's more about it's easy to raise your game and have focus when you're playing a big side, because you know that if you don't, you're going to be on the end of a hiding. Whereas you're playing a team that at the back of your mind there's a little voice saying we're better than these. We just don't seem to be able to match the opposition in terms of desire, fitness, enthusiasm, anything. And for the first hour yesterday, that is exactly how it seemed. Yeah, I appreciate that on the back of a challenging game against Liverpool, a very challenging game against Arsenal that went to 120 minutes and then penalties, there was going to be some fatigue. We'd only had 3 days off in between. So I do appreciate that would come into it. But that you can't always use that as an excuse for the underwhelming performances that we've put in on a regular basis over the season. And it seemed like that again yet last night. If I'd done a video last night, I'd probably be a hell of a lot more critical than I'll be now, because at the time it was just far too familiar, and I'm sick of saying the same sort of stuff all season. It's no surprise when we put in these sort of performances. It's what we're expecting. The surprise comes when we play like we did against Liverpool and Arsenal and actually seem up for it and on the front foot and keen and ready to fight. So often we're coming up against this sort of team and giving them far more time, space to do what they want. You know, if you're playing in the Premier League, you're not crap. You know, you're pretty good at your job if you got to a point where you're playing in the Premier League. And we seem to give people far too much respect and let other teams build their confidence, get in a bit of a rhythm. And because we haven't got a rhythm, we never seem to be at the races. And the first 45 minutes I thought was really, really poor. When you look at the facts of it and you say, yeah, it was 15th against 20th, and then watch the performance, you think, yeah, but I'm not sure who's who. Because looking at that for the first half, you would have thought that Southampton had wanting 15 and we had wanting 20th with the lowest sort of points at this point in the season in history, because that's exactly how it looked. As I said at the start, how the fact that we only went in 1 down, it was extremely fortunate. Southampton could quite easily have scored 2 or 3. With a couple of good saves from Onana and some rather mediocre finishing from Southampton, we were lucky that we only went in 1 down. To come out for the second half, you would have expected people to be having had a bit of a bollocking at half time and come out much more ready to put Smith in. The fact that he only made 1 substitution with Anthony would have led you to think that as well, because if he'd have come out and changed 4, most people wouldn't have been remotely surprised. It was pretty much what a lot of people deserved. But you thought, well, he's only making 1 change. That could be sort of fitness or whatever. So he's going to give them quarter now to see how they go. And he didn't. He gave people 5 minutes. The two he took off, it could have been, as I say, it could really have been any it could have been any 2 from 10, really, to be perfectly honest. Hoyland did very little. Cobby did very little. But to be perfectly honest, they weren't really the exceptions. There was lots of people you could say that about. Mazraoui didn't have a very good game. Amad didn't have a particularly good game either. Garnacho was very sort of bitty. Lenny, I think that maybe the pace of the game and Southampton's left winger caught him out a little bit, and he never really seemed to get up to speed during the game. Bit of a baptism of fire for him, and won't necessarily be the worst thing for him. It might be a bit of a wake-up call for him. That some of these teams go for it from the start, rather than coming on with like 10 minutes to go like he has done previously. Having said that, bringing on Zirkzee and Collyer probably did more to win the game for United than anything else, which sounds weird when Amad scored a hat-trick. But I think without the substitutions, I don't think we would have been in a position to capitalise on Southampton's fatigue kicking in after about an hour out. Zirkzee has looked more promising over the last couple of appearances. That 15-minute cameo got against Liverpool, the time he got against Arsenal last Sunday, he actually looked far more like the player I think we were expecting him to be when we bought him than he has done at any other time in the season. I'm not going to say he was fantastic and all the rest of it, but he was a lot better than Hoyland. And I think players soon cottoned on to the fact that they could hit a ball into him, knowing full well it wasn't going to be coming straight back at him 2 seconds later, which was the case with Hoyland for most of the game. He not only was able to keep the ball, he actually used it really, really well. He took up some really challenging positions for Southampton's back three, which started to seem to me anyway to start to put some seeds of doubt in the Southampton's defence's mind. Collyer was just a lot more consistent. Ugarte probably had one of his more disappointing games for United. He's been very, very good for the last sort of half dozen games or so, and maybe it was just tiredness from Sunday. He didn't look, maybe he was just a bit ill because there's a lot of bugs knocking around, but he wasn't as sharp as he has been previously. Collyer came on, didn't do anything flash or fancy. He just did what he was there to do and kept it very simple, and that was probably just exactly what we needed. He was just there. He offered the legs that we didn't have because Ugarte had a bad game. Cobby had quite a bad game too. Collyer and Bruno in the middle was a lot more solid. And I think that helps us to get a bit of a footing in the game, which then we sort of, as I say, we capitalised on Southampton's tiredness over the last sort of 20, 25 minutes or so, which left us in a position where we could do what Amad did in the last 10 minutes. Anthony, it was nothing to lose with bringing Anthony on. Did we get any worse? No. Did we get any better? No, not really. He's a body, really, and probably the only relatively fast player we had on the bench. So I understand why they brought him on. He still doesn't do himself any favours. He's not United quality, and throwing him on for halves here and there is not going to make him United quality. The miss that he had really said everything about his state of mind and confidence levels. There was no need for him to slide in for that finish like he did, and it almost smacked at somebody that doubted his ability to finish that first time, so was just going to get his body in the way of it. He could have quite easily just carried on running and side-footed that in, but he didn't seem to trust himself and his ability to do that, so went for what he probably perceived as a safer option, sliding in and getting something on it. The fact that he knocked it essentially back where it was coming from, straight to the keeper, summed up his United career. The sooner he moves, the better it'll be for him and us. It's that his ship has sailed at United, and it's not coming back anytime soon. Southampton also did not look like a side 20th in the league. I appreciate they didn't have an awful lot to lose, and teams always tend to raise the game when they're playing United anyway. But Southampton were, for that first hour, were very, very good, and as I said, could quite easily and justifiably have gone in, been 3-0 up after an hour, and you couldn't have really complained if it was. Apart for some really good keeping and some wayward finishing, I felt that Southampton were really, really good. And in Tyler Diblin, I know I'm not exactly sort of saying anything new here, but they have got a very good footballer. If he's still there in August, I'll be amazed. I'm not saying he'll be coming to United, but he'll be far too good to go and play in the Championship. And there's probably far too many clubs will be sniffing around Tyler Diblin at the end of the season for him to be still on the South Coast come August. I think really to sum it up, I think last night it was one of those games where the result was more important than the performance, and I think we're going to have to get used to that for the rest of the season, just because of the sort of amount of players we've got that are the sort of square pegs in round holes. A make do amend approach to a squad. I don't really see us bringing in too much in the January window unless they sell Garnacho and get some money in, but then that would leave us in a position where everybody knows we've got some money, so they'll be asking stupid prices. So I'm not really expecting too much movement in that case, and if that being so, I think we need to prepare ourselves for more performances like that. We've got, I think it's Brighton coming up, we've got Fulham coming up, we've got Rangers coming up. Teams that on paper you would like to think that we should beat, but the reality of the situation is that these are going to be really difficult performances really difficult matches for us, and I'm no real confidence in the quality of the performance we're going to put in. If we play shit and win 3-1 each game, I honestly couldn't care less. That would do me for now. It's a win. We're actually scoring a few goals. I mean, we scored 4 last night for being pedantic about it, but we are starting to score goals. And I think this is really important. They're coming from Amad predominantly, but they are starting to come, not necessarily from our forwards, but at the moment I'll take them from where I can get them. After the performance last night, it does make you question who's going to be starting at the weekend. It's going to a point now, I think, where Zirkzee probably has reason to expect to start. Højlund has not been playing well at all. Whether it's low on confidence or he's not quite sure what he wants to do or what he's being asked to do, I don't know, but he isn't playing well, and Zirkzee is. So, and in those situations, I don't really see the benefit or the reason why Højlund should be a guaranteed starter, because his performances don't warrant guaranteed starter. Zirkzee over the last couple of minutes, we need to start him and see how he goes. He's been very good when he's come on, so let's start him. Let me know what you think. I was less than impressed, I'll be perfectly honest. I thought we were extremely lucky to get away with that, and I wouldn't let Amad's hat-trick paper over the enormous cracks that were apparent in the rest of the performance from last night. Anyway, I shall be back on Monday after the Brighton game. Hopefully a better performance. Similar result would be perfectly fine by me, and I will see you then.